Christian.
What's up,
my
everybody?
friend. Hello.
Hey,
Welcome.
been a while.
In a while.
Yeah, it has.
All right, but so honestly, we have so much to talk about since we haven't talked in a long time and everything. Honestly, since Wano ended.
Yeah. Damn, that was like what, 3 years now?
Honestly, it's a great place to start, I think, because this whole Sanji debacle, I think it stemmed from the Zoro versus King fight in the anime and the Sanji versus Queen fight. And I think Sanji's quote unquote performance during Egghead and people's opinion on that going forward into this recent thing in the manga with, Scopper kind of telling Sanji, something in some off panel that we don't know yet. But either gonna be Sanji has Conqueror's Haki, or it's nah, dude, you ain't got it. But it'll be alright.
Put his hand on his shoulder. You ain't him, man.
So first off, what are your thoughts about?
Okay, so given the recent development of the reveal of the God Knights, how they have this regenerative ability that no one really knows how to deal with except for Scopper and Gavin, and now this is looking like the only way, as we know of right now, to fight these people. Yeah. I'm on the boat that say it is possible that he is going to get it, but I do not think it's in the way that everyone's going to expect. Because I know there's a huge thing where everybody's talking about, this thing with Will or how the Conqueror's Haki is associated with dreams. Like Luffy is to be the Pirate King, Zoro's wants to be the best swordsman. So stuff of that nature that we've seen people who have that strong desire to be at the pinnacle or at the top of something have it. I think in Sanji's case, knowing Oda, it'll probably be very different. It'll be for a much vague reason where he is so, we know Sanji is a womanizer. He loves women, and to be the most gallant knights, or the top of all white knights to defend any woman in need, I think that will be his trigger for Conqueror's Haki. I can just see Oda doing that.
At this point, it's almost if Sanji gets Conqueror's Haki, it's either going to be a really impactful emotional moment or it's going to be a bit.
Yeah, exactly. and seeing how Sanji's been done during these days, he's just used for bits. I could see that being one of the reasons why he accesses it, or how you say, a strong desire to whether it be protect his friends or help them achieve their goals. I do see him getting it because it looks like if this is the only way to fight these people, the monster trio, they're all gonna have it. It's just a given, But that's just my thought. What do you think, Marky?
I think where I fall into it is it's really complicated seeing the online discourse around it, and it seems
it's crazy.
It's obviously an agenda around wanting Zoro to be up here and Sanji to be down here. I get but I think there's I think while a lot of people want to ignore the narrative component to it, it's still going to come down to, and it's probably going to be a boring answer to a certain degree, but it's really going to come down to if Oda needs Sanji to have Conqueror's Haki, he'll find a way to make it make sense as to why Sanji would have Conqueror's Haki. Exactly. Now, completely going off of that, I think the better question is asking do we as fans think that Sanji is deserving of that power as a character, if that makes sense for his character and where he's going for his dream, versus Zoro and Luffy, which they have these big, broad, dreams that require a power like Conqueror's Haki. Zoro and Luffy, to a certain degree, are almost using each other, even though they are friends, for their own respective goals. Zoro's to be the greatest swordsman, so that makes sense that inevitably he needs to be on a level where he could be able to face up against Mihawk. And I think it's safe to presume that Mihawk more than likely has Conqueror's Haki. Yeah. And I feel Zoro kind of awakening into it late is still fine and totally makes sense for where he's going towards that inevitable fight as we round down to the end of the series. And obviously Luffy's our main character, and he's he got the will of D, so there's plenty of different reasons why he would have Conqueror's Haki. I think that while I understand that Sanji doesn't come across as a character that probably needs Conqueror's Haki, and I'll say that right up front. One thing that he gets it, I'm fine kind of with either option. I just think that as far as fighting for his right to have Conqueror's Haki, I think that in Whole Cake Island, Sanji had like a really like like deep backstory where like he was treated like he was worthless by his parents, by his siblings, like he was like worth nothing. And I think the poetic, like kind of like closing to that chapter from like where he's decided that he didn't want to like use the raid suit in Wano, and where he is now is kind of like coming to the point where like we actually see that like Sanji has been special all this time, and that in reality, out of all of his like baggage he has in his family, maybe now's the time where like he awakens into a power that is all his own, and isn't dependent on his family. But maybe a big part of that is him finally accepting his own genetics, which is like his Vinsmoke genetics, and fully awakening that before he can fully awaken into his Conqueror's Haki.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go off to what you said there, because that's a really good point too. It seems that there is some kind of association with Conqueror's Haki and the users being fully accepting of who they are, like from top to bottom, like no doubts, no nothing, just accepting themselves wholly as the person as they are. So that may also come into play, that like how you said, him accepting his Vinsmoke heritage, his genes and all that stuff, that could also be a factor of like, yeah, this is who I am, and I don't care, you know what I mean? So I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to find the old blue, I'm going to protect my friends, I'm going to do whatever it is that may be that could trigger it. So that's another good point. I didn't think of that at first until you started talking about it, but that is good. Like, I can see that being a good reason that he accepts who he is, Vinsmoke, and with the Barati and the Straw Hats, like himself as wholly, no matter what that is. So
because to me, like even if you compare like Zoro's fight with King and then Sanji's fight with like Queen, like Sanji and Zoro are like both head to head, they're also diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Like Zoro's fight was all about like manliness and like will and sheer strength, and pushing through.
Demon of hell.
Like and then like Sanji's was like way more like emotional and like introspective. And the way that Zoro got his Conqueror's Haki was through his own method of like like pushing himself to the absolute limit against Kaido, first awakening that, and then like fully kind of like using it, even though he wasn't conscious of that, against King. And so I feel like
so good.
Sanji, and so I feel like with Sanji, like it's almost like has to be the exact same way for him, where like however he decides to get Haki, it almost has to be in that same kind of way in order for us to, because I feel like we're talking about like Sanji and Zoro, right? The reality is that Sanji's fighting for his third spot. That's what Sanji's really fighting for. Because he's fighting Jinbei for his third spot. Like, that's why it's so funny to me, this whole debate about like, oh, like is Zoro more than strong Sanji? It's like, okay, I personally, as a character, I like Sanji more. I can say that, but at the same time, I can also openly be realistic and say Zoro's dream is to be the #1 swordsman. Say he accomplishes that dream. Are we really going to be saying that Sanji and Zoro are on the same level if Zoro was the top swordsman in the entire world?
Yeah.
The reality is that probably not.
Yeah.
Like, they'll probably still clash and still be like kind of even, but when it comes to the raw strength, Zoro will have him beat. But it's still other elements of Sanji where like Zoro's like a complete moron that Sanji has like Zoro beat. So,
yeah, like Sanji's scouting is unparalleled. Like Sanji's like the best scout on the Straw Hats, like look at Water 7.
Like be it Water 7, be it Alabasta, be it like some elements of Wano, like Sanji's always that person who's like, elevating the Straw Hats to a situation where like if they're like gonna be in trouble, they're good. There's like a big part of why they escaped Water 7 was thanks to Sanji.
Yeah. He put in the work. That dude became Batman.
He was, as far as I know, all Zoro did was like be a giraffe. So I'm just saying. So like I think that's really what we're finding here is Sanji going to be able to get to a point where like he gets that spot personally, if like we're presuming, I think that it's safe to presume, if not already confirmed, that Gabon has Conqueror's Haki, right?
Yeah.
So that means Roger, his first mate, and Gabon had Haki.
Yeah, it's like it's right there.
I'm just saying, like the monster trio is way more cooler with Sanji than it is with Jinbei. I'm sorry to tell you this.
Yeah,
like,
sorry, Jinbei fans. See that? I mean, he kind of got slapped around that last fight with what was that Holy Knight? I forget his name.
Yeah, so like I'm just saying, like if there's any moment right now for like Sanji to awaken to it, I think now would be the right time for it. I think it'd be a really cool way to kind of see like the deeper, like, intimate things about Conqueror's Haki, because like Gabon said a really weird thing in the most recent chapter that like Haki is something that needs to be tamed, and clearly like this is something that like even Zoro wasn't aware he had, but Luffy could notice that his Haki was going all over the place.
He's like, you've been spanking all over the place, linking that everywhere.
It was on purpose. No.
He's like, oh my bad. I thought that was just my musk.
And so like that's where I assume that like there has to be some standpoint of which like if Haki can be tamed in a way that like like Scott was saying, maybe there's some kind of element of like while like you have to be born with it, maybe there is some way to like tap into something that's deep within you and like take it out of you faster, because Luffy awakened to his Haki like pre-time skip, during a really like pivotal moment when like he was really mad at Hancock, and then like he managed to kind of like let it leak, and it happened again when he was trying to save Ace. So any like really
do or die scenario,
serious moments where it's do or die. And when you think about it, so did Zoro. Zoro had a do or die moment where like he had an all-out attack against Kaido, he put everything he had into it, and it was then that his Haki awakened. And Sanji, ironically enough, hasn't really had that moment yet.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, if there's any time for him to have that moment, it'd probably be during the arc where we're really fighting demons. and immortals.
Everything is like it's hell on Elbaf right now. and there's an underworld there already, but it's literal hell on Elbaf.
The cool thing about One Piece to me is that like it literally brings the phrase, if there's a will, there's a way. It's a power-up system almost. Yeah. And so if Sanji really wants to have Conqueror's Haki, if Sanji really feels like he's worthy of it, I think a big part of that is him like having to like wrestle with who he is on the inside and why he wants it. And as a result, I think in the best moment it'll finally awaken. But I think that's the only reason we're even having this conversation. I think it's less about Zoro having it and more about, is Sanji going to be worthy of it? Which is funny that this entire arc, which we all were hoping there would be a big one for Usopp, is mostly about Sanji. But hey,
yeah,
it's a whole other topic.
sorry, Usopp.